everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Against All Odds. And as I say at the beginning of every podcast, this is purely selfish podcast because I get on people that inspire me. And I came across my next guest on TikTok and saw his story, and I just had to get him on. So I'm ever so pleased to welcome today Steve Kirby from SK Life Coaching. Welcome, my lovely. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm amazing. When I watched a podcast with you on, I was absolutely blown away with your journey. And I feel so lucky to be interviewing you right now because you shouldn't be sat here talking to me.
No.
So you are a life coach that works with many people, but one of your kind of niches is the construction industry.
It is.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I ask everybody that come on here, because you normally find when people are going out and impacting the world like you are, they've always got a big why. So why are you doing what you're doing now?
That is a good question. But as a guy and who's been to the darkest of places, because of obviously we'll go through what happened, but because of what I went through and where my mental health went, I know how easy it is to fall into that dark hole, and you don't see a way out. But I also know, because I've experienced it, that you can climb out of that place and you can go on and live your best life. But you've got to communicate, you've got to talk. As I said, when I do my presentations, at the end of each presentation, I'll say life is a story and we go through chapters. Now, whatever dark place you're in at the moment, that doesn't have to be the end of your story. You just need help to rewrite the next chapter. And the only way you get help is by talking and communicating and sharing those emotions. And we can all go on to live our best life. For me, every day is a blessing and heaven is on earth. It just depends where your mindset's at and how you think.
So yeah. So let's get on to that day that changed your journey.
The 11th of January 2011. So that morning, I was 32. My two kids, Harry and Joe, was 4. Harry was 4, Joe was 8. Normal day, as days start out for all of us. I got up, I had breakfast with the kids, I got them ready for nursery and school. I give them a kiss, and I said, right, I'm off to work. And I went to work. I'd been in construction at that point for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
I felt I was a very competent person. I was a confident person. With the experience I had in demolition and construction, I'd done almost everything. I felt like anything on site I could have a go at. I was a plant operator, so I drove a 360 and many other machines, loading shovels, dump trucks. And it was just a normal day. I was just going to work to carry on doing what we'd been doing before the Christmas break. So we'd had 2 weeks off for Christmas, gone back. And a lot of your listeners will understand the intricacies of the job, but we was doing a pressure test on a section of pipe, me and the guys had installed. As a digger driver, I'd dug the trench, we'd installed the pipe work, and we was told that we couldn't go on to dig the next section out until this section had been pressure tested. Now,
Right.
I'd never done a pressure test before. I didn't even know what a hydrostatic pressure test was. The company couldn't get a specialist team in because it was so soon after Christmas and it was a bit of a rush job. So they brought a guy in from an agency who apparently was a competent person. He'd done this, he understood it. And the job seemed really, really straightforward. All we had to do was fill 60 meters of pipe with water. So it's 600 mil pipe, so big pipe. Fill it with water. When there's water coming out of the valve, close the valve off, put a pump on it and pressurize it to 28 bar of pressure. Now, all of that meant nothing to me. I didn't understand pressures. I didn't know where it was. I just knew we had to pressurize this pipe. Once it's passed, we can crack on and I can dig the next section out. Now, the guy started pressurizing throughout the morning to cut it a bit shorter. It's the spigot end, which is a 460 kilogram piece of steel, big chunk of steel, with a flange on, with 24 nuts and bolts. It started leaking at about 3 bar of pressure. So we stopped the pump, tightened it up. Then started leaking an hour later at 5 bar of pressure. So again, this guy said, stop the pump, get in, tighten it up. Gets to 10 bar, something didn't feel right, so I stopped the job. We get told in construction, if something's not right, something don't feel right, stop the job. So I stopped the job and I said to one of the other guys, go to the office, tell the manager what's happening, and should it be leaking? Should this be happening? So the guy went to the office, saw the manager literally looked into it a little bit, told us it can't go nowhere and carry on, go and do what you're doing. He came back, he said it's all right. So if a manager is telling you something's all right, you're going to listen, you think, right, fair enough. The guys tightened it up at 10 bar. It then got to 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it started leaking again at 18 bar of pressure. Now, I now know that 18 bar of pressure is the equivalent of about 53 ton pushing against that plate. So if you can imagine 50 small cars pushing against that plate. I didn't know this at the time, and I don't think the other guys understood it either. But it started leaking. It's 3 o'clock. It's nearly home time. We finished work at 4. It was at 18 bar, and we was going up to 28 bar of pressure. So it taken all day to get to 18 bar. Now, in my brain and my way of thinking, I just thought, if I get in that trench and I tighten up all 24 nuts and bolts myself really tight, it'll get up to pressure and we won't have to work late and we can go home.
Right.
So I jumped on my machine. I said to the guys, give us the harness, because you have to wear an harness to enter the trench. Give us a harness, give us the spanners. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to tighten it up. I want to go home. I don't want to be here. The guys used to call me fatty at the time, which I don't know why, because I didn't think that. Yeah. Well, I was about 16 stone and I'd been lifting weights since I was 16. So I was 32, 16 stone. I wasn't being gung-ho. I just knew that I was physically stronger than the 2 young lads that was in there.
Yeah.
So I entered the trench, and as I had the spanners in my hand, as I went to go down the ladder, I passed the spanners to one of the other guys. I gets into the trench. I'm stood in front of the pipe. I reached up to get the spanners back, and as I reached up, the end blew off at 18 bar of pressure. So you can see some pictures on my other socials and stuff. You get an idea of what happened. But
yeah.
I remember reaching for the spanners, but then my next memory, I'm underwater. So I'm trapped underwater. I don't know where I am. I didn't know I was at work. Knowing now, I'd been knocked unconscious and then came to underwater. But I didn't know that. I just knew I woke up underwater. I thought I was in the local river. And all I can remember, I didn't know which way was up. I couldn't get out because I was basically, all of that water in that pipe had come out to the end of the trench, and then it was just washing about. And I just felt like I was in a washing machine. But when they say your life passes before you, as I said, my boys was 4 and 8. I'm trapped underwater. I'm not religious, but I'm praying to God, please, please, I can't die. Please let me out. You know, like, help me. I remember physically screaming for my mum.
Yeah.
Because I believe this was it. There was no way out. I'm dead. Now I was trapped underwater for about a minute, which doesn't sound like a long time, but a minute underwater, drowned in your own head with your thoughts.
Yeah.
It felt like a lifetime. When my life truly did flash before me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I felt myself rise up. And what had happened was, when it blew, there was a massive bang. There was water everywhere. All the lads ran off in different directions to protect themselves. And then one of the lads looked back and saw me laid face down in the water. I thought I was fighting to get out, but I was just laid face down. He thought I was dead, but he had to get me out. So he jumped in. As he lifted me up, everyone who heard the blast come running over to see what had happened. And everybody shouting at me, Kirby, breathe, fucking fatty, breathe. And I remember looking at people thinking, somebody please help. I'd swallowed that much water, I was still drowning.
Yeah.
And as the guys passed me out the trench, the water dislodged and I was able to get my breath. Now, considering the blast and what had happened, physically, I was really, really lucky. If that pipe had hit me, it would have cut me in half. I wouldn't be here today. But somehow I was blown out the way. the pipe was 600 mil and the trench was only 1200, so there's not a lot of room in there. As I said, I was 16 stone, so I'm a bit of a unit stood in there. But somehow it didn't touch me because I wouldn't be here. Now, looking back and doing what I now do, people don't survive these type of failures. Even the percussion from the pressure kills people outright. But somehow I'm still in. Now, physically, my arms was hyperextended, so my elbows went the wrong way. My boiler suit, my harness had been blown clean off. I had a cut in the back of my head, what needed stitches, where I probably hit my head on the way back down. I had pipe bedding, so I had gravel stuck in my face, my neck, my shoulders like shrapnel where it had blown at me. And I was battered and bruised from the amount of pressures in the initial blast. But physically, I still am really. It's like 13 years ago, and I was told I'd never work out again, I'd never lift weights again. But I do look after myself. I just can't go heavy in the slightest. I'd done that much damage to the tendons in my arms, and they're not repairable. So once they start tearing, I didn't have a lot left. And the doctors warned me that if I'd carried on doing weights, my biceps will snap. And I just ignored that. And about a couple of years later, after the accident, doing bodyweight training, and my bicep just snapped. So I needed surgery. So it still affects me today, 13 years later. I struggle with my back. I struggle with my feet. My boot was found 20 feet away. So the amount of pressure that must have gone through my body to blow my boots off 20 feet on another part of the site was a lot of pressures. But yeah, physically I was really, really lucky. So I travel the country sharing the story from a safety perspective about training and communication. But a big part of what I do and why we're having this conversation is mental health. Because at 32, I didn't believe that we didn't talk about mental health as we do today 13 years ago. We didn't, it wasn't everywhere like it is, but we did talk about depression. Now, at 32, I didn't believe in depression. If anybody said to me they were struggling and needed time off, I was the guy telling them to man up. You can physically do your job. What are you going to do? Go home and lay in bed? It's an excuse to stay off work. So I had no empathy towards depression because I'd never gone through it. Now, my background, I'm off a council estate in Hull. My mum and dad got divorced when I was 10. So it was me and my younger sister. So from the age of 10, I felt a massive responsibility to man up, basically, and look after. I was the man of the house. I had to look after my mum and my sister. And being on the estate where I'm from, you didn't talk about your emotions. You had to be tough, like mentally and physically, because if you wasn't, then you'd get bullied. People would take your bike off you. They'd take your football off you. People would walk all over you. So from a really young age, I ain't saying I am tough or a hard man, but you have to be mentally and physically tough. And I took that. I took that through my teens and then into demolition and construction because, again, it's a male-dominant industry, and you just didn't talk about how you was feeling. So because I'd never gone through depression, and I'd kind of got through everything, and I'd been through a lot at the age of 32, I just thought, well, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Crack on to get it. What, you're going to go home and lay in bed? And I didn't understand it. But then because of the accident, the very next day, that same night, when I tried to sleep, I had flashbacks. Every time I closed my eyes, I was trapped underwater and I'm screaming to God, please, please, don't let me die. I can't die. I've got to be home for my kids. And that hit me massively, but I couldn't deal with it. So my way of taking the edge off was I'll have a beer, I'll have a can, it'll calm me down. Now, from that first can, the following day, my partner at the time, the boy's mum, Katie, said, you can't drink, you're on the strongest painkillers that the hospital would give you. You're not allowed to drink. And my attitude was, I'll be all right. You know what I mean? I just need to take the edge off. I ended up drinking it was just after Christmas. We had a fridge full of beer, we had spirits, we had all sorts lying about. And that was where my mental health journey kind of started, self-medicating. And then that alcohol, the more I drank, looking back now, the more depressed I became, the darker my thoughts got. I was angry, I was agitated. I'd never laid hands on the kids or anybody else, but I was so angry at everything. And I remember Harry's 4. I physically couldn't move. This is like probably just a couple of weeks after the accident. I was scattered and bruised, and Harry came to jump on me to play. And I physically pushed him away and said, "Fuck off, go mum, go away." And he went off crying. And I'd shout at Joe for no reason, just for playing with his toys. I'd be like, "Get him cleared up." And then I found myself sat in the bathroom thinking, "What is wrong?" Like crying my eyes out, thinking, "What is wrong with me?" I'd splash my face and walk out, and Katie would say, "Are you all right?" And I'd just smile at her and go, "Yeah, of course I am. I'm dealing with it." Now, I wasn't dealing with it. I was broken, and I was starting to sink into that spiral of self-destruct and depression. But I didn't see that at the time, and I just thought, I'm dealing with it. And then, yeah, it just got worse and worse to the point where I had intrusive thoughts. I believed that I was supposed to die that day. I then went on to start planning. I started thinking the kids and Kate would be better off if I had have died. And then I started thinking of ways of ending. I didn't want to put trauma on anybody. I didn't want to end my life in a way where somebody had found me. So I started thinking of ways of just disappearing.
Yeah.
And yeah,
you know what? It's interesting that is because you'd survived it and you were so lucky, yet the after effects made you not want to be here.
Yeah,
and that's quite common, isn't it? Like with trauma, PTSD and things like that.
With PTSD and trauma, it's really, really common. And I went from being a really confident 32-year-old to having no confidence whatsoever. I'd lost all my self-worth. Everything, I just saw the bottom of a bottle. And we lived week to week. So we got to a point where I wasn't at work, I wasn't going to get paid, didn't know where the money was coming from. I was sending Katie to shop to get me cheap bottles of cider because that's all I could afford. And I was drinking anything that I could get my hands on. And then she refused to get me anymore. My mum was helping me out and dropping me beer off and bottles off. And then Katie had a word with my mum and said, "Don't get him no more drink. It's making him worse. He's not in a good place." I ended up falling out with my mum and not speaking. I said to her, "Look, if you're not going to help me, don't come and see the kids because you're not seeing them." And I was using emotional blackmail because I wasn't getting what I felt I needed. And then I fell out with my mum, I fell out with my sister, I fell out with everybody. And within that is where the thoughts got even darker because I thought nobody's going to care. You know, like, and yeah, I ended up in a really, really dark place because of that trauma, which a lot of us do. No one person's trauma is any more, any less than somebody else's.
Yeah.
And so we all go through trauma at some stage in life and it impacts us all differently. And I see that now, but I didn't see that back then. I just saw that I didn't want to be here no more.
So did you find it, I suppose with you not seeing it, when was that the kind of decision where you reached out for help?
I'm from Hull, and the only way I could think of disappearing and nobody finding me was the Humber Bridge, which is a local suicide spot, if you like.
Right.
And people jump off the bridge and they either get lost in the mud or they get washed out and never to be found. Now, I drove there pissed out my head. This is about maybe 12, 14 weeks after the accident had happened. I'd gone deep into that spiral and that's where my head was at. I'd got to a point, I had to have cortisol injections in my elbows to be able to move my arms because of the pain in my arms. And I dared leave the house to go and get my injections because I thought something bad's going to happen. Like, a bit like the film Final Destination, where they cheat death and then it comes from. That's where my brain went. That's where my mind went. And I knew if my dad was taking me to physio, because I couldn't drive, so he was taking me, something bad was going to happen to us both, and he's going to get hurt. And I'd make excuses. I'd make sure that I'd had a good drink in the morning, so when my dad come, I couldn't go and have my injections because I was pissed, basically.
Yeah.
But I did anything and everything I could to not go out. And then when it got to that point, I drove to the bridge pissed up with the intention of jumping. And I sat in my car, and I talk about this on my presentations, but I can't put an exact time on it because I don't know how long I was sat there.
Yeah.
I just sat in my car crying because I felt I had to do it, but I didn't have the. And knowing what it feels like to drown, I couldn't do it. So I just sat there for hours and cried. And then when I went home, Katie was waiting for me, and she screamed at me because she knew I'd been drinking. She didn't know where I'd been. She'd been panicking, and she was like, "Where you been?" Blah. Like, we had a massive argument, and I couldn't tell her where I'd been. I couldn't tell her what was going on in my head. And she said, "Look, you either speak to a doctor and get help, or you pack a bag and you leave, because it's not fair on the kids. It's not fair on me." And in that moment, I just had a full-on breakdown. I had full-on flashbacks. I was having a panic attack. I couldn't breathe. And I just remembered praying to God, please, 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 don't let me die. I've got to be here for my kids.
Yeah.
And here I was, so close to, even though I survived the accident, to not being here. And that's when it all kind of hit me. And then Katie rang a doctor. A doctor came out. He looked at me and he said, "Steve, I'm not a psychologist. I'm a GP, but you've got PTSD, you've got anxiety, you've got depression. You've been through a massive trauma." And I was referred to the local mental health hospital, which is Victoria House in Hull. And the next day I went and sat with a lady and I explained everything I've just said to you, but in a lot more detail, a lot more about the anger, the frustration, the ups, the downs. And she sat with a tear in her eye and said, "Steve, I'm really, really sorry, but I can't help you. I'm not qualified enough." And to me, that was, nobody could help me. And she just cemented that. She just said, "I can't help you." And she said, "I'm going to speak to my colleagues and we'll be back in touch." And I was sent away. And my dad had taken me on the way home. I stopped off at garage and my dad was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I need a drink." He thought I was getting a bottle of Coke, a can of Coke.
Yeah.
And I came out with a bottle of vodka. And he was like, "What you got that for?" And I said, I need a drink." And I went home. Katie saw the bottle and just turned the other way. And I went upstairs. And I remember being sat on the bed, just downing this bottle neat and crying into the bottle, thinking, I just don't want to wake up.
Yeah.
And I ended up, I think I finished, I drank the lot within about 10 minutes. And then the following day in the afternoon sometime, Katie got me, she said, "Come on, you've got to go back to the hospital. You've got to go back to Victoria House." Now, as you can imagine, I didn't want to go. I was feeling really, really rough
Yeah.
But I got myself there and I sat with another therapist, explained it all to her, but she just looked at me and smiled and said, "I can help you. I can get you through this." And the second she said that was like a big heavy bag had just been lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah.
And she explained fight, flight, freeze. She explained all the fundamentals of mental health, of trauma, where my head was at, and how it was all normal to be feeling the way I'm feeling. And I never saw that. I didn't, at that time, I didn't even think I had mental health problems. I was just going through the motions. But I sat with that lady for 4 months, twice a week. And basically, she put me on the path to being who I am today and where I'm at, which
That's
I can't
amazing.
thank that lady enough.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But it shows that by reaching out and by speaking to somebody, the help is there, and we can turn our lives around. But especially guys, we don't like to talk. We deal with it. Like, we tell ourselves, "I'm dealing with it." But when it comes to emotions and whatever we've gone through, we've got to talk about it in order to get through that chapter.
That's it. And we spoke about before the podcast started. I didn't realise the extent of the mental health crisis in the construction world until I watched Danny Dyer's documentary that he released.
Yeah.
What is wrong with the construction industry, and why is mental health so high? Because it's ridiculously high, isn't it, in that industry?
Yeah, and whether it's management level or whether it's boots on the ground, there's a lot of pressures within the industry. There's a lot of time scales, there's a lot of contracts. You've got to get this done at this time, get that done. So there's a lot of stress, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with stress, and they're taking work home with them, and they're taking the home life to work with them, and it just builds up and builds up and builds up. And again, like me, they're telling themselves, "I'm dealing with it," but again, within the construction industry, especially within the operatives, the trades, a lot of people live week to week, and that's how it is. It's just we live week to week. So there's financial issues there as well, which a lot of guys again don't want to talk to the partners about, and they feel they've got to run everything, they're supporting everything. But then you've got the zero tolerance to drink and drugs within a lot of businesses, a lot of industries. And if somebody's having a drink and they don't understand units, as we spoke about, like one unit takes 1 hour to leave your system. If somebody's having 10 pints and then getting up and going to work the next day, they are going to be under the influence still because they've gone over the units. So if you're having 4 pints, there's a good chance it's going to be out your system by the following morning. If you're having more than that, then it is still going to be in your system. But a lot of companies, rather than offering the support and saying, look, if you've got a drink or drug problem, come and see us, the support is there. It is getting better, but there is still a lot of zero tolerance. But for the guys who do get marched off site because they have got weed in the system or alcohol, or they did coke on the weekend and it's still in the system, they get marched off site. They've lost their livelihood, they've lost their income. And then the pressures of that is when a lot of them go on to just end it because they don't see no other way out. So I share my story and talk to companies about the zero tolerance and drink and drugs. And there's got to be more support there. There's got to be a lot more.
Yeah, I was about to say, when you had your accident, was you offered any support?
I was offered nothing, but it goes really deep into the. It turns out that incident was never even reported to the HSE, which is really bad within the construction industry.
Yeah.
So it was covered up from the very beginning, which I only found out 5 years ago when I set up SK Life Coach UK. So yeah, there's a lot of things get covered up. There's a lot gets brushed under the carpet. When it comes to certain jobs, there's a lot of guys who haven't got the training, but they'll get pressured into doing something anyhow because it's got to be done. And if they don't do it, they'll get somebody else in who will do it. So there's a lot of pressures within the construction industry. So that's a big part of why I do what I do with these companies all over the UK, because it's got to be brought to people's attention and
I'm really glad that you're really busy with this. So when you walk into like an event that's got organised in the construction world, how do you start? Because like you say, it's not easy for men to open up. Right? They do talk differently than women. So how do you even start that journey to helping somebody?
I think because when I first started, it was really difficult. Like I never intended to become a speaker, and my intention was to be a coach. So everything I'd learned over the last, at that point, 7 years, 5 years ago, was I was helping people randomly with the mental health, using tools and techniques that got me out of my dark place. And someone said, you should do this as a business. So I thought about it and I thought, well, I ain't been to college. I don't know how to set up a business, but I just kind of winged it and went along with it. My name's Steve Kirby. So the obvious name was Steve Kirby Life Coach, SK Life Coach. There was already one of them on Company House. So I added the UK at the end. So SK Life Coach UK was born. And then when I set up initially, it was just to help guys one-to-one. So I put a little story out there on LinkedIn. Another company, a big company, saw it and said, can we give you a call? He then said, will you come to our head office and share your story? And I was like, why? And he's like, because it'll really help. And that's when I was thrown into the speaking world. So really, really nervous. I had no idea what I was doing. But at that point, it was literally just the accident and my mental health. But over the years, and the more I've done that, I've realized by me showing my emotions and by me showing what it, like for me, it shows more strength to talk about what you're struggling with than it does to just keep it in.
Yeah, yeah.
So a lot of guys don't talk about it because it's not manly to talk about your emotions. But I've learned that it shows more strength. And when I started sharing more about the mental health side of it, I had more guys coming to me at the end and shaking my hand and giving me a hug and saying, how you was feeling at that point is exactly what I'm going through now.
Yeah.
And then I realized then that this is needed, you know. And there's a lot in the industry now. You've got Lighthouse Construction, obviously, you've got Andy's Man Club. There's all sorts of different organisations now and charities that are doing their part to support as well. But
Yeah.
when I set up, I didn't see any of this. I didn't know none of this, and I just thought, what I'm doing, the guys that are coming forward, there is a need for it. So for me now to do what I do and stand up there for an hour, and I put everything on the table. I talk deeply about my emotions and where I was at and where I'm at now. And it encourages, by hearing a story, it encourages other people to then look at their own lives and mirror it and talk about themselves. And yeah, so for me, it was difficult, but I love it. I'm passionate about what I do. And if I can put all of my emotions out there and show that, yeah, I'm a man. I'm 45. I've got tattoos. I'm quite big, but I am approachable, and I will talk about what I like, what I don't like, about how I'm feeling, how I'm not feeling. If that's going to encourage other people, then that's why I put myself in the situations that I do.
That's it. I think it's one of those things. If people can resonate with you,
Yeah,
especially in that industry and how you felt, then it instantly kind of gives somebody the okay to go, right, okay, it's safe here, so I can talk about it.
yeah.
And he's not going to judge me.
No, and that's how we should all be, not just within the construction industry, but in all industry, and just in everyday life. If we all communicate more and we all talk more and we all there's so much negativity going on anyhow in the
Yeah,
world, which
yeah, yeah,
brings people down. It's like sometimes I'll put a post on LinkedIn and someone will say, "What's this got to do with LinkedIn?" And it's like, look, it's just we'll have a conversation because obviously you're angry at life for something. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
it doesn't have to be negativity. Let's talk. And
Mm.
and I think that's what it's about. That's what I'm about anyhow. It's about encouraging people to just talk to each other, to communicate. And no matter what your background is, no matter what you've done, no matter what you've gone through, we can all change and we can all be better people. And that's what it's about. It's about one thing that I talk about is how we all take risks to save time or money. And
Yeah,
that's within work, that's within what we do day to day. We know, for example, we're driving, our mobile phone goes, we shouldn't be checking TikToks on our phone while we're driving, or we shouldn't be replying to messages. But we'll look at the road, it's fairly clear, we'll think, oh yeah, I'll be all right. I can just reply to that. The second you're telling yourself it'll be all right means it might not be. So just
yeah,
take 5 seconds just to think what what would be a better scenario? Should I pull over and reply? You know, like why put myself or anyone else in danger? And it's the same with our mental health and our minds. If we're having to tell ourselves throughout the day numerous times, I'll be all right, it'll be okay, then there's something not right, and that's your body signing you to reach out and to talk to somebody before you do
yeah,
go into that spiral. So if you're having to tell yourself all the time, I'll be all right,
yeah.
then stop trying to do it alone and talk to somebody.
That's it. You said an amazing thing to me before we press record is looking back at your accident, it happened for you.
Yeah.
That's
If
an amazing attitude to have.
I now believe everything happens for a reason. And when I work with some of my clients one to one and they've gone through some really traumatic thing, like as I said earlier, no one person's trauma is any more or any less than. So people will say, "Oh yeah, I've gone through something, but nowhere near as bad as what you've gone through." And it's like
Yeah,
you can't compare. Trauma to each of us is trauma, and there's no scale on it. It's however it impacts us. Now, if I hadn't gone through what I went through, I wouldn't be the man I am today. I wouldn't be who I am sat here. I wouldn't be helping people. I wouldn't be coaching. I ain't saying I was a bad person. I'd still be working as an operative or a manager, but I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And someone said to me on a talk last week I think I was in Derby, and they said, "Do you realise how many lives you've probably saved by sharing your story?" And I'm like, "No, I just do what I do, you know." But it made me sit back, and I couldn't count how many people I've had reach out on LinkedIn, for example, and tell me that they're going to end their life, or they was going to end their life, and they saw my story, and now they want help, and it saved that person. So looking back, I can see it. Don't I do save lives. I do help people. I don't actually physically do anything. Like, people will thank me for transforming their lives, and it's like, no, I ain't done anything. You've done it.
Yeah.
I've just helped you along the way. But yeah, if that accident had never happened, I wouldn't be where I am today. I probably still, with all this mental health stuff, I'd be one of them people that are saying, "Oh, I'm sick of hearing about it." You know what I mean? It's mental health this, mental health that. But now I understand how important looking after our mental health is, and how our well-being is. And studying what I've studied over the last 12 years, even tying stuff in like nutrition, and as we talked about alcohol, how all that impacts the mind. I wouldn't have known any of that. So yeah, everything happens for a reason. Whatever we go through, whatever's happened, it's in the past. We can't change it. We can take lessons from it. Even though some people can't see it, you can take strength from it, because it's made you the person you are today. So you take it, you move forward, and you just carry on being you.
That's it. Because I'm a big believer there always something good in it. Anything that bad's happened, there's always something good that comes out of it.
Yeah, there's always a negative and a positive. It doesn't matter what it is, and that's something we talk about karma and stuff like that. There's always a negative and a positive. And even though sometimes you can't see it in that moment, no matter how bad that trauma might be, or that addiction or that abuse or whatever someone's gone through, obviously that's not a positive. Going through it isn't the positive, but taking lessons from it and moving forward, you can turn it into a positive. Sometimes we just need, and sometimes we just need a bit of help to do that. And that's why I set up as a coach, I suppose.
But absolutely. So you mentioned fitness and nutrition there, because that's showing massively in the neuroscience world, especially fitness and exercise is helping massively in the rates of like depression and anxiety and things like that. Do you find a lot of men that kind of don't do a lot of health and fitness?
I have men getting in touch with me saying, I've got young kids and I get in from work and I really want, they want me to play with them and I ain't got no energy. I just ain't got no energy. And I'm like, who's telling you you ain't got the energy? And they're like, well, I'm just knackered after a day at work. And then one thing I'll put to them is, well, if I said to you right now, you can be as tired as you maybe not eating for 2 days, you haven't had a drink, you're struggling, you've had a full day at work, you've had 2 hours sleep, you're absolutely knackered. But if I said to you, there's 10 grand, run to top of street and back, you can have it, you'd find that energy, you'd find that motivation to run to top of street for that £10,000. So when you're getting in from work, after you've had a night's sleep and you've been eating all day and you're fully hydrated and you're telling me you're tired, you're not. You're just not motivated. So what is that worth to you? And then the amount of guys that have got back in touch with me a week later and said, I can't believe where my mind was at. Thank you so much. I get in from work now. I'm being more active. And just being more active has given me more energy. And it does. And obviously, nutrition plays a key role. If we're eating a lot of processed food and crisps and chocolate bars through the day, drinking energy drinks to get us through when we're feeling tired, that is going to make us feel worse. And we are going to feel really lethargic and really down, really tired. But if we can eat a fairly balanced diet, and people say, oh, I can't afford to eat healthy. It's like, yeah, you can. You really can. And then if you can eat healthy, you cut out sugar. Sugar's a big killer. You can still treat yourself. You can still enjoy the chocolate bar, but don't be just drinking energy drinks and fizzy drinks for the sake of it. Do you know what I mean? Have a bottle of water. Do you know what I mean? Drink.
Do you know how many people struggle to drink water? And I'm just like, it's just water. It's nothing,
Yeah,
you know.
I get a lot of people coming up to me because they're really like they're slightly overweight or they're really bloated, and I'll say, "How much water are you drinking?" And they'll be like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because if you're not drinking enough water, your body's going to hold it." Now, I'm not a doctor. I just use what I've learned over the years for coaching and nutrition. But if you don't drink enough, your body's going to store water, and you're going to have water retention, and you're going to be bloated. If you drink more water, if you can drink 1.5 liters a day at least, you're going to lose weight. And they'll be like,
Yeah.
really? And it's like, yeah, honestly, try it. And people start drinking more water, and then they realize that they do feel healthy, they do feel better, they have got more energy. A lot of my clients will come to me with anxiety. I'll be like, so where's this anxiety come from? What have you gone through? Have you gone through something? What's triggering it? What are you panicking about the future? And they'll be like, no, nothing. I've gone through no travel. I've had a normal life. I've not gone through anything. I just get this crippling anxiety. And then they'll be on medication. And then I'll be like, right, I want you to keep a food diary for me. And they'll be like, pardon? I'm like, whatever you eat and what time you eat, I want you to write it down, or what you drink, whatever you're consuming, keep a diary. If you have an anxiety attack, write that down as well. And a lot of people who have got anxiety but don't understand where it comes from, I'll then realize that there'll be a certain food that they're eating which is triggering an anxiety. And it's not an anxiety attack as such. Their insulin levels have shot up and dropped, and they're feeling shaky. And it's the nutrition, it's the diet, it's what they're eating. It's not actually anxiety. And people say, well, why has the doctor never told me this? And it's like, because doctors are happy passing out your pills and getting paid.
Absolutely.
and they're not bothered. But simple things like keeping a food diary and realizing what foods affect you in what way, nutrition is a key part of our mental health. People don't realize the brain needs fats, and they think, oh, well, you can't eat fatty things because they're bad for you. It's like, no, sugar's bad for you. Sugar's bad for the brain. Good fats are really, really good. So plenty of oily fish, avocado, nuts, seeds, all them type of foods. Omega-3, like supplement, is really is what the man needs. The brain consumes most of your energy, most of your calories, and so you need to be eating good fats. But people are having sugar instead to stimulate the brain, like energy drinks, which I hate. And when I see people walking with a can on, I'm like, what are you drinking that for? You're gonna have like 20 seconds of feeling energetic, and then you're gonna dump, and you're gonna feel down, and you're gonna feel depressed, and people don't realize that until they actually give them up.
That's it. Do you know what? I'm so glad that you're sat there saying that, because there's massive neuroscience research being done, like in the gut-brain axis now. Yeah. So the Mediterranean diet is like, it's getting phenomenal results in like curing like depression and anxiety. Mm. And it's just a simple diet, you know, with no processed food in. It's just a balanced diet. GPs will still hand out medication, and so they're going, right, what are you eating? Are you going to exercise? It's just, here, have a tablet.
And people think to be more active, you've got to go to the gym and you've got to go and throw weights or go and run 10K. And it's not about that. It's about just take the dogs for a walk, take the kids for a walk, or just get yourself out in nature. Just go walk for half an hour, 15 minutes there, 15 minutes back. And
get some fresh air,
just get some fresh. And by just being that little bit more active, your mental health is going to be a million times better just through getting out and doing something. And the more active we are, the more energy we'll create, and we'll feel better. Yeah. The better you feel, the more self-worth you've got, the more confidence you've got, the better your mental health is going to be. And a lot of people who are struggling with mental health is because they've got low self-esteem. They've got lack of self-worth. They're they're not liking themselves too much. But
Yeah.
if you, like I say to my clients, do you look in the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself? And they go, no. And it's like, why not? And I'm like, how are you expected to love your family and everyone else, but you can't love yourself? Now, when I was growing up, if someone said, oh, he loves himself, that was a negative. Do you know what I mean? It was.
Yeah.
Whereas I will happily look in the mirror and say, I love me. You know what I mean? I'm happy with who I am. I'm confident. I love myself. And that ain't a bad thing. So
Yeah.
people put themselves down all the time, especially men as well, but especially women. A woman will look in the mirror and think, oh, I'm fat, oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that. If you're telling yourself that you're fat, then you're fat. But
Yeah.
if you look in the mirror and tell yourself that you're going to change, you're doing stuff in a positive way to make yourself feel better, and you love yourself, you will start changing. I've known women who have dieted for years and years and years, but there's still nothing changes. And it's because they're not seeing it. They're still telling themselves that they're that person. If you can visualize, we live in our imagination. So we all live in our own world. And your imagination controls everything around you and your subconscious. Now, I'm a trained hypnotherapist as well. So I know how the subconscious works and the conscious mind works. And if you're telling yourself all the time that you're not worthy, that you're fat, that you're ugly, whatever it is, you're going to hold on to that. And that's who you are as a person. But by changing the way you think and by changing that self-talk, anyone can go on to achieve anything they set their mind to. And we can achieve anything. And I show that. I left school with no GCSEs, no qualifications. As I said, off a council estate, had nothing. I'm not giving a sob story, but I had my bed and a wardrobe and no carpet for years and years and years. That was it. And I remember we had, as kids, me and my sister would eat sugar sandwiches because there was nothing in, and it was sweet, and it was something to eat. And that's, some of us, we're not educated. We come from poor backgrounds. We don't know what to do. But it doesn't matter where you're from, where you've been. If you look forward and you can see it, you can be whoever you want to be. Whether you've got those qualifications, whether you believe it or not, if you start to believe in yourself, a lot of people don't believe in religion or God. And I'm a spiritual person. I don't believe in the whole Bible and all of that. But there's definitely some of it. But I believe in energy and vibration, and do good things happen. And I think if you can believe in yourself, if the one thing you can believe in is yourself, then you can go on and you can achieve anything.
Yeah, I love a quote, and I don't know it's by, but it says, "You are who you think you are."
Yeah, it is, and it is exactly who you are. If you're telling yourself you can't do something, then you can't do it. If you're telling yourself you can, you might not do it first time, but the more we practice anything as humans, the better we become at it. And so when I first ever started speaking 5 years ago, I turned up and I was a nervous wreck, and I wasn't probably that good at compared to other people. Now I've been doing it 5 years and I've traveled Europe doing what I do. I'm confident in myself, and that comes across. And that's all it is. Nothing's going to happen overnight, but over time we can all train ourselves to be whoever we choose to be. It's just having the guts to go for it.
Absolutely.
But
I definitely think working with somebody like you helps, because it is change, whether you're changing a diet or your mindset or your fitness. Change is quite scary.
Change is scary, and I hate the word diet. Nobody should have gone a diet.
No.
Diets are just fads, what come and go, and there's a million different fads, and some of these big industries jump on them and say this works for, and all these celebrities, and then people do it, and it works for a bit, and then as soon as you come off it, and it's back.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, the Mediterranean diet, just roasted vegetables, tomatoes, fish, good fats, olive oils, avocados. That type of diet is going to be amazing for not just your physical health, but your mental health.
Yeah.
And it's living that way. It's a way of life. It's not a diet. It's just how you choose to eat and who you are. As a coach, I will never tell anybody to cut out chocolate or crisps, or you've still got to enjoy life. You've got to have nice
Yeah,
things as well. So you can still enjoy chocolate in an evening if you choose. And you're not going to put on a load of weight because you're having a packet of crisps. But it's
yeah,
everything in moderate. Whatever you're doing now, what's not working, just tweak it, and change will happen. And people expect it to happen within a couple of weeks, but it
yeah,
doesn't. Like, I stopped drinking alcohol over 2 years ago, and I've probably lost a stone in weight just through cutting out alcohol, which I didn't notice at first, but gradually over time, it's like, oh yeah. But as
yeah,
people see, if you go from a TikTok, I'll still enjoy biscuits. I'll still enjoy a lot of things that are bad for me, but in moderation. And I, I don't drink alcohol. My go-to drink is Pepsi Max,
yeah,
which
yeah.
again I'll treat myself to. If I go for a pub meal or go out, I'll have a Pepsi Max. Other than that, I drink water or a cup of tea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you know,
Like,
it's with the diets. I spoke to a nutritionist a few episodes back, and she was like, with the diet thing, if you, as soon as you say to somebody, right, you can't have chocolate, it's like your brain just, it's complete
yeah,
FOMO. So you're going to fail before you've
yeah.
started.
If you pop in garage for some fuel or something, and the first thing you're going to do is grab chocolate because
Yeah, yeah,
you can't have it. But if you know you can have it, just not as much as you've been having, then you can treat yourself later on. And
yeah,
but it's just tweaking what we're eating already. That's basically it. And people, it's about educating people on nutrition, on
yeah,
what's good for the man. Like, you're a man coach, like dementia, Alzheimer's, stuff like that. Having a handful of blueberries every
yeah,
day
yeah,
is amazing. It's an antioxidant, amazing for the brain. People
yeah.
don't. A lot of people don't know that, and just by doing that, it's going to help with the
Absolutely.
man. Ah,
I do believe that, there's so many simple things that people can do, but the information isn't out there for everybody to get.
no,
And I think that's a big problem.
no, and there is information out there. Like, we've all got Google. We can all Google
Mm,
anything, and it's there. But then a lot of the time, you get all these, I don't know, like other coaches who are saying, "Oh, jump on this, and I guarantee you this. If you will do this, we'll do that, we'll do that." And you've got to buy into it, and it costs an absolute fortune. And then the pressures are there, and it just doesn't happen.
yeah,
Whereas if you can educate yourself, you can learn about nutrition. It is really, really basic. Cut out anything packaged, processed foods, put them in the bin. Eddie Abul, bless him, I think he's great on TikTok.
yeah.
But outside Tesco's, don't eat this shit. No, it's, you can't cut out everything. No, nobody can just eat 12 eggs a day and a bit of chicken. That's
Mm,
not, again, it's diet. It doesn't come down to that. You've got to eat a balanced, varied diet, but still treat yourself. And by cutting out the processed stuff is going to make a massive difference.
yeah,
There's
absolutely.
when it comes to anything packaged, there's a lot of preservatives in there. There's a lot of salt. There's a lot of stuff in there to stop it going off, so it can stay on the shelves for a long time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when we consume that, obviously that's going into our bodies. It's going to impact it. So if you can cut out processed food, eat a fresh, varied diet, you are going to be a lot healthier, and your mental health's going to be in a lot better place.
You're so true. I talk a lot to about instant gratification, because the modern world, it's that comfortable that it's costing us. So
Yeah,
it's like with food, you can walk into a supermarket, you can get a ding meal. So if you want to go somewhere new, you don't look at a map now, like you just put the sat nav on.
yeah, it's kind of fun.
We've got iTunes where we don't have to go to the shop to buy a track. We've
Yeah.
just got it there. Let's push a button. It's like with kids, right? We had to wait. Like, how old are you, by the way?
How old am I?
Yeah.
40, 45.
Oh, well, you're around my age, right? We're Gen Xers, aren't we? But like, when we got home from school, we had to wait for the kids' programs to come on.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Now they're on all the time, so the kids don't have to wait. It's like we are a nation of people that we're that comfortable, we've got everything now. So I believe it's like when people are on about changing their mindset and the diet and the fitness, like you said, it doesn't happen instantly. That's where most people go, oh, right, well, that's not for me
Yeah.
then.
I haven't got time for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I ain't got time for that.
it has to be now.
Yeah,
and,
how
and
long's it gonna take? Yeah.
yeah, and they're searching for these magic pills and whatever else that they can get online to make it happen.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's not about that. It's just about you living your life in a healthier way.
Yeah.
And I get, like, I work with a lot of addiction, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's food, whether it's gambling. And it's the same with that addictive personality. It's just a lot of us have it, and it's within us, but we can change it, and you can swap them negative addictions for positive addictions, which isn't always a great thing, because going to the gym 6 days a week for 3 hours isn't great for you either, but it's taking you away from the negative that you're doing before. There is positives that we can swap for the negatives. But again, when it comes to being active, people say to me, "Oh, you must. How often do you work out?" You know, like when I do these talks, like, "God, you're a big guy. Like, you must work out what 5 days a week." It's like, no, I maybe once a week, if that. I might, when I go into my garage, I've got a pull-up bar. I might do 20 pull-ups, and that'll be it for a couple of days. But I do walk my dogs every single day. I do go for a long walk. I do stay fairly active, but you don't have to go and throw weights about, or like I said earlier, go and run 10K to be active. You've just
Yeah,
got to get out there and enjoy it.
that's it.
It's
You're
that
so
simple.
right. So we need to say as well that you don't just work with the construction industry, you work with men, women,
Yeah,
anybody that needs a bit of help.
as a coach, I work with absolutely, and when I set up, it was construction because that's what I knew. But
Mm-hmm.
over the years and the people I've worked with, like self-harming, all sorts of different trauma, addiction, I will work with anybody who wants to improve their life where they're at. Now, I ain't saying I'm a magician and I can make it all better, but using the tools and techniques that have got me to where I am and where I'm at mentally, physically, and successfully with business, I'll share in all my knowledge, and that's how, as a coach, that's how I can help people moving forward.
Yeah.
But and that's what I do more of. I like coaching wise. I only ever like to take on about 10 clients at a time because I want to know people personally. So if we had the conversation and you said, right, I could do with some coaching, then I want to share information about me so you know my background. Then we'll discuss where you're at, where you want to be, whether it's health, whether it's promotion, whether it's work, whatever it might be. And then if I feel that I can help, then I'm like, yeah, let's work together. I'm not
Yeah.
just going to take your money for the sake of taking it and
Yeah.
promising you the world and then not delivering. So I'll only work with certain people and around about 10 clients at a time. It's normally 6 sessions over whatever period works best for you.
Yeah.
And then normally it'll be once a month or once every couple of months. We'll have an accountability like hour where we can just get in touch, see where you're at, see what's happening. And then I'll take on more clients once them clients are in a good place. But what I learned when I had therapy, when my hour was up, even in the beginning when I was still in a bad place, as soon as my hour was up, my therapist was like, right, that's it. Time, Steve. See you on Thursday. And I'd walk out of there feeling worse than when I went in. And,
Yeah.
and a big part of why I set up was I wanted to do things differently. I want to work with people, but I'm not going to let them leave until they've got a smile on the face, whether it's in person or whether it's online. Unless we're laughing at the end of the conversation. So whether that takes an hour or whether it takes 2 hours, it doesn't matter. I want you to be in the best place mentally when you leave me, so that I know going forward before our next session, you know what you've got to work on and where you're at. So yeah,
Yeah.
coaching wise, anybody, but we will have a conversation first, because
Well, you got to make sure you're a right fit, you know.
you've got to have that rapport with people. You've got to know that you've got that understanding of each other. Business wise, sharing my story. Initially, again, it was construction. Now it's everywhere. Safety and well-being impacts all of us. Doesn't matter what industry you work in. So it can be office-based, it could be an hairdresser's, it doesn't matter what it is. Safety and our well-being impacts all of us. So if me going and sharing my presentation is going to positively change people's mindsets, then that's what it's about. It's about encouraging people to make positive choices. And as you say, you're a brain coach. If we can work with the imagination, the mind is really, really powerful, but it can turn on us in any moment. So even the people who's never suffered with mental health, who think that what happened to me, one bad day, one bad moment can flip that, and the brain it's very, very delicate, very delicate. So as powerful as it is, it's also very delicate, and it's understanding that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody wants to go, right, Steve, I need help, where can they find you?
Well, first of all, I'm new to TikTok, but follow me on TikTok. Message me, I'll message you back. But my website, if you Google SK Life Coach UK, podcasts, everything comes up. My website is just basically like a generic one, what's on there for information. A lot of my work, what I actually take on, is through LinkedIn. So Stephen Kirby on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically just Google me. And if you want to work with me, whether it's business or whether it's one-to-one, then just drop me a message and I'll get back. As you found out, I'll get back to everybody. You know what I mean?
You do.
It might take a little bit of time, but I will get back to people.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for being such a fantastic guest. And like I say, thank God you're alive. And I love the work that you're doing, especially in men's mental health, because it definitely is needed. And I do believe you are the person to be getting out there and doing that. So thank you. Anybody who's enjoyed the episode, make sure you follow Steve on TikTok. His videos are great, which is why I messaged him in the first place. So don't miss out. So thank you, Steve.
No, thank you for having me.